Well, there she is in action. I'm delighted to say she's made it here in person today, Belinda Carlisle. Welcome to Wales, Belinda. Now, it's been a really busy year for you. I mean, we've heard a lot, particularly at the beginning of the year, obviously, with the birth of your first baby. Right. He was tiny when he was born. How is he now?
Well, he's 4 months. He just turned 4 months old yesterday, and he weighed 3 pounds 13 ounces when he was born, but he's about 13.5 pounds now. So he was fine. He was just small.
Tiny. And yeah. I believe he listened to Guns N' Roses was the first music he heard.
Yeah, I requested Metallica, but they had no Metallica, so I got Guns N' Roses instead. I figured it was a good way to be brought into the world.
As the eldest of 8 children, had you been feeling quite maternal anyway up until you had him?
No, I was not ready to have a baby until the past few years. I was starting to, my maternal instincts were starting to, you know, become stronger. But I waited.
It was a pretty eventful week because the day after he was born, the LA riots broke out. That must have been terrifying at the time.
Well, yeah, it was really bad. In fact, they were looting right across the street, and the National Guard was surrounding the hospital I was in, and the smoke was coming into the hospital. It was bad, and it's still pretty tense around there.
Can you see it happening again?
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
Now, has it put you off wanting to bring James up in LA?
Yeah, I mean, eventually I'd like to leave the city, of course, but, you know, we can't because my husband, you know, works in Los Angeles, so for the time being we're stuck there, but eventually we'll get out.
You also live in that wonderful house there that used to belong to, is it Carol Lombard? Could you bear to leave that?
That would be hard, but, you know, I mean, I think the safety is the most important thing.
Was it one of those houses that you saw and you thought, I've just got to live there?
Well, I used to drive past it all the time, and I had no idea about the history of the house. So I just left it out on the door one day, and the owner said he wasn't interested in selling, but he invited me in, and I fell in love with it and persuaded him to sell. And
who was she living in there with at the time?
It was during the Clark Gable affair, before they married.
Oh, really? So her and Clark Gable snogged in that very house?
Yeah, they did, definitely.
Now, the other famous establishment that you lived in Hollywood at the time of the Go-Go's was a place called Disgraceland.
Yeah, that's pretty historic, yeah. It was a house full of girls, a bit, you know, it was a pretty funny atmosphere, very music-oriented.
Did the name sort of sum up the lifestyle at the time as well?
It certainly did.
How do you feel now looking back at those days of the Go-Go's?
I think they were great experiences, and the good and bad, and I'm very lucky to have experienced something as wonderful as the Go-Go's.
Was it all really as wild, though?
Yeah, it was pretty wild, yeah, definitely.
Why did you, when you put your throat, you got addicted to so many things at that time, why do you think that happened?
I think that, you know, just my personality would have happened to, you know, no matter what I decided to do. So a lot of things play into it. I think I'm just basically an obsessive-compulsive person.
You also had quite a strict upbringing. Did that have anything to do with it? I mean, were you rebelling against
Well,
that?
I was, you know, very rebellious when I was growing up. So, I mean, I think that had to do with it, too, rebelling against anything.
And what kind of made you turn your back on it then? What was the turning point?
Well, I met my husband, and I decided that I wanted to make a lot of changes, and he helped me, you know, make a lot of personal decisions, and here I am.
Do you think overcoming that kind of a thing, all those addictions, gives you a greater inner strength?
I think it definitely builds character, yeah.
How does that addictive side manifest itself these days?
Well, you know, I mean, I just have to watch. I can tend to be a little bit extreme in anything I do, so I just have to keep an eye on it.
And are you kind of happy with yourself as you get
definitely.
older?
Oh, definitely.
I think it all gets a bit easier.
Definitely.
They've got a new single out, Little Black Book, which is said to be autobiographical. In what kind of way?
Well, it's you know, basically the song is about, you know, finding phone numbers in your book and calling the person and hanging up on them after you hear their voice.
Did you used to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think everybody has.
And what else have you got coming up now? Have you got any tours or anything planned?
Well, I'm going to go into the studio in November and start my next record and go on tour probably next year.
Any more children planned, anything like that?
Not in the immediate future, but somewhere down the line, yeah.
It will be. Well, listen, Belinda Carlisle, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.